There have been a lot of rumors about your love life. Did you meet anyone special in Germany?
Not any special one. There were some pictures made of her. There was no big romance.
Have you ever wondered what was really happening behind the scenes of Elvis Presley's legendary career? The king of rock and roll dazzled millions, but there was a darker side to the fame. Now, decades later, Elvis's trusted bodyguard, Sonny West, finally reveals the shocking truths we all suspected. Back then, being a hero wasn't just about performing, it was also about keeping up a front. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had a life that was both great and lonely. His fame grew, and everyone only saw one picture of him, the smooth-talking, soul-stirring singer who could do no wrong on stage. But Elvis was fighting in ways that not many people knew about, even with all the bright lights and passionate crowds. People talked about his addictions, mental upheaval, and battles with anxiety for decades. But the stories were never fully confirmed. People who loved him saw the man they loved. But not many people saw how fame changed him. One of the few people who stood by Elvis's protection and friend Sonny West through it all. After years or even decades, he is breaking the silence and telling the truth. The man behind the myths was much more fragile than anyone thought. The reports that had been going around for years were not just guesses. Sonny's statements proved them. But what did he see? That which had been hidden for so long. People around the world knew Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll. But he was so much more than his flashy clothes, famous voice, and electrifying stage presence. Behind all the fame and glitz, Elvis was just a guy. He was a very talented and generous person. But he also had deep personal problems that not many people saw. Sonny West, who was Elvis's protection, was one of the few people who saw the real Elvis behind the scenes. Besides watching over Elvis, he was a sure-of-himself friend. Because West spent so much time with Elvis, he saw the legend at his weakest. While people all over the world praised Elvis for everything he did, the man behind the microphone was often lonely and had fears he couldn't get rid of. Since he has so many fans, you might think that he would never feel lonely. But for Elvis, success wasn't always the answer. Other times, it was the opposite. Around him, Elvis was surrounded by fans, reporters, and people who just wanted to see him. When the lights went out and everyone went home, Elvis was left with a hole that no one could fill. Sonny West remembers seeing this side of Elvis too often, his constant need for praise and doubt of himself. He had to be Elvis Presley, the famous person who was available all the time. In spite of everything, he was just a man trying to stay together. Behind closed doors, Elvis was very kind and always willing to help others. As if helping other people would fill the void he felt inside, he would often give gifts to his family, friends, and even strangers. Even though his fans loved and respected him, Elvis still felt like he had nothing left for himself. He gave the world everything he had. His voice, his drive, and his personality, but he didn't feel like he got much in return. The sad truth is that Elvis seemed to lose more as he gained more. All of his time, heart, and energy were being given, and he felt worn out and had a hard time finding peace. He was the world's king, the man who could do no wrong. On the other hand, Sonny West and a few others thought Elvis could never be whole again. West had also seen the darker sides of Elvis, like when the famous person would shut himself off from everyone else. No matter how much success he had, he could never get away from the weight of expectations. People wanted Elvis to be on stage all the time and be known as the king of rock and roll. But who was Elvis when he wasn't performing? Who was he when there was no one to back him up? You could say that Elvis felt trapped by his own fame. Even though he had a lot of success, he always felt like he wasn't good enough. He felt anxious everywhere, even on stage and at Graceland, which was supposed to be a safe place but sometimes felt more like a golden cage. Sonny West saw it all, the ups and downs of Elvis's life, from the glory days of fame to the hard times of his personal problems. King was a man with problems, just like everyone else, but he was also a celebrity. Elvis's story isn't just one of fame. It's also one of weakness, self-doubt, and a man trying to fit in with a society that always expected more from him. But behind the generous superstar was a man hiding darker battles that only Sonny knew about. The stress never stopped after Elvis Presley came on stage. He never had enough hits, records sold, or screaming fans packing the stadiums. Everyone, the media, the fans, and the music business expected the best, and Elvis felt pressure every single day. When Elvis first came out on the music scene, everyone went crazy. He was new, different, and real, which is everything people wanted in a star. But with that much achievement, he felt like he had a lot to do. For Elvis, it was more than just making music. People expected him to live up to his image and always be Elvis Presley. And that was hurt. Elvis had a very busy routine, which Sonny West remembers. Not just the long tours or never-ending recording sessions, but also the many public appearances, news conferences, and fan events. He didn't have a break or a chance to be himself for a moment. Elvis was always on, thinking about what his fans and the business wanted from him. If he wasn't performing, he was either being interviewed or taking photos. The stress never stopped, and it was annoying. Then Graceland came along. It was supposed to be a safe place for Elvis to stay, but it turned out to be more like a golden jail. Certainly he lived at Graceland, but he was also constantly watched there. He had to deal with the expectations of fame all the way back to his house. He didn't feel calm and at ease in that house. Instead, he was caught up in his own success. There were always people around, like fans, reporters, and staff, so Elvis could never just disappear and be himself without his picture following him around. Perfect was always being pushed and strained. Elvis didn't think he could ever slow down, let go, or miss something important. He was afraid that if he wasn't always making music, performing, or making news, he would fade into the background. And that was a terrible idea for someone whose whole identity was based on being the king of rock and roll. It wasn't just about making music. It was also about staying on top, staying current, and keeping up the image that everyone had come to expect from him. This stress put Elvis on a path that was hard to get back from. He started to feel like he wasn't doing enough, no matter how much he worked. While Sonny West was talking about Elvis, he said that he sometimes had imposter syndrome, which made him feel like he didn't deserve to be called king. Most people thought that Elvis was perfect and couldn't sin. Elvis, on the other hand, was always afraid of being seen as just another normal guy. Over time, this constant stress started to have an effect on Elvis's body and mind. This pressure led Elvis down a dangerous path, one that would ultimately cost him everything. The most shocking thing that Sonny West said was how much Elvis relied on prescription drugs. It was an honest, sad fact, not a media rumor, that brought him down. What started out as a way to deal with the huge demands of fame turned into something much worse. In the beginning, Elvis had a very busy routine. He was worn out from constantly traveling, recording, and appearing in public. Elvis took medicines to keep him going. Some helped him stay awake for long periods of time, and others helped him fall asleep after a show. At first, it looked like a simple way to fix a plan that wasn't working. But over time, those medicines went from being a way to get by to being a lifesaver. Because he spent so much time with Elvis, Sonny West saw firsthand how the drugs ruled him. What started out as a way for him to deal with the stress of his job quickly turned into a terrible addiction. There were more drugs than just pills now. Elvis needed a mix of drugs to stay alive. This put him in a loop where he needed one type of drug to stay alert and another to help him come down from the high. As his mood swings, anxiety, and strange behavior became more common, this cycle finally turned into something much darker. Sonny remembers that Elvis would pace Graceland all night because he couldn't sleep. These sleepless nights were more than just annoying. They were caused by his drug addiction that he couldn't kick. Instead of finding comfort, Elvis found himself stuck in a cloud. He tried to calm his rushing thoughts by using drugs, but all that did was make him more addicted. Things did not get better with Elvis's closest group, the Memphis Mafia. These were his friends, confidants, and team members, the people he was closest to. But they did nothing to stop his addiction. They always made sure Elvis had what he needed, which kept up the cycle that would eventually hurt his health and life. The drugs didn't just affect his health, they changed who he was. There were changes in Elvis Presley's personality and behavior as his drug use got worse. The man slowly changed into someone completely different from the charm, vitality, and humor that used to captivate people. Elvis was close to Sonny West, so he saw firsthand how drugs changed his friend into someone he barely knew. Elvis's once vibrant and charming personality slowly gave way to a shadow of his past. He became less stable, and his mood swings became less predictable. He was known for his funny and charming smile, which made him the lively star that everyone loved at the time. But the next day, he would have been completely different, angry, sad, and often completely alone. This man was fighting to hold on to what was left of himself. He wasn't the Elvis Sonny used to love. Getting addicted changed everything. Elvis started to act violently, which was something no one had ever seen him do before. He is said to have become suspicious and sure that people were lying to him. He was close with the king of rock and roll, and Sonny saw with horror how his mental health got worse. People who were close to him could see how much pain he was in and felt helpless to stop it. It broke their hearts. Less easy to ignore was the damage Elvis's addiction was doing to his body. His once thin body began to clearly gain weight, and his health began to get worse. His heart problems, which had started out small, got worse, and the fact that he had to take so much medicine made things even worse. The way his body looked changed because of the fights he was having inside. Elvis wasn't the same person he used to be, not even on stage. Fans who came to see the lively and captivating artist began to notice changes. He moved slowly, and his voice, which used to sound strong and in charge, sounded strained. Sometimes he forgot the words to his own songs and even the beat of them. But addiction wasn't the only thing haunting Elvis. There were personal betrayals that hit even harder. Celebrities loved Elvis Presley, but he never seemed to find lasting happiness in love. His relationships were passionate, even though they were very hard to handle, full of lies, and often ended in heartbreak. We could see that love and relationships were never easy for the king of rock and roll because Sonny West talked about these women in his life. Elvis's first love was Dixie Locke, a woman who reflected the innocence and simplicity of his childhood before fame changed everything. Dixie was the girl Elvis thought he would marry, and she was with him as he became famous. But fame and success slowly drove them apart. Elvis's surroundings became more chaotic, and their relationship couldn't handle the stress. Few women really knew the person Elvis was before he became a worldwide icon. Dixie was one of them. Then there was Priscilla Presley, his most famous girlfriend and the woman he married. Even though it looked like a happy love story, there was a darker side to it. Sonny said that Elvis wasn't always the great husband that everyone thought he was. Instead, he was often bossy and controlling. He had trouble trusting people, and because of his fame, he was wary of anyone who came close to Priscilla. They loved each other, but their marriage was in trouble, and they couldn't avoid the emotional toll of being in a public relationship with each other. Priscilla wasn't the only woman in Elvis's life who made his love life difficult. Joyce Bova and Sheila Ryan were two people Elvis had relationships with behind their backs. They were deeply in love with each other, but stayed anonymous. There was confusion, passion, and love in these interactions. Even though Elvis had troubled relationships with the women in his life, he still seemed to need to connect with other people, even if it was only for a short time. But Anne Margaret, the only woman who seemed to really know Elvis, was the most interesting to me. Sonny said that their relationship was real and not just a one-night stand because they had a special bond. Still, Elvis couldn't fully accept it because he had to take care of Priscilla. Elvis had a hard time because he loved Anne Margaret and felt he had to take care of his wife. It bothered him and broke his heart in a way that he couldn't fix. Even the people closest to him couldn't save him from what was coming next. Even the people closest to him couldn't save him from what was coming next. By the middle of the 1970s, Elvis Presley didn't look like the person he used to be. Although drugs, fame, and loss had all hurt him, it was the betrayal of his closest friends and family that really broke him. Since Sonny West and the Memphis Mafia were family to Elvis instead of just workers, they saw firsthand how he began to separate himself from them. Once he trusted them, his worry and mistrust came to the fore. Elvis had always been a loyal person, but as his problems got worse, he started to doubt everyone's dedication. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's boss, was called the biggest liar by Sonny. Parker was in charge of his job and, as a result, everything he did. He was also Elvis's business partner. Parker clearly had his own goals, which were not always in Elvis's best interest. It was proven by Sonny that Colonel Parker took advantage of Elvis by forcing him on endless trips and bad deals. Parker sometimes made decisions that were more about making money than about Elvis's health or happiness. Parker's decision not to let Elvis play abroad was one of the worst things he ever did. Elvis had fans all over the world, but Parker kept him in the U.S. because he thought it would be safer and make more money that way. This move, on the other hand, hurt Elvis's chances of getting ahead in his career and kept him from meeting fans in other countries. Sonny thought Parker's actions were more about greed, most likely to keep Elvis dependent on him, than about control at the time. Sonny also thought Colonel Parker was hiding something much worse, maybe Elvis's debt or visa issues, that made him not want to let him leave the country. It was hard for Parker to believe that he was in charge of Elvis's career, not for the singer's gain but for his own. Parker was like a father to Elvis, but over time it became clear that Elvis's trust in Parker was misplaced. Elvis felt more alone as he lost faith in the people around him. His anxiety grew, and the ties he used to have with the Memphis Mafia became less close. He began to wonder if even the people who had always been there for him were doing it to help themselves. This feeling of betrayal made him less stable than he already was. By the late 70s, the once great king of rock and roll was barely holding on. When Elvis Presley was dying, he wasn't at all the lively, exciting person whose singing had made people all over the world happy. As Sonny West watched the king get worse, it was heartbreaking to see someone who had once been strong and powerful turn into a weak shadow of himself. He was in such bad health that his body was unrecognizable. Elvis had gained a lot of weight, and even though the tasks were easy, it was hard for him to breathe. He had no energy at all. Some days he could hardly walk. Even though his health got worse, Elvis's love of singing never changed. He felt alive when he was on stage and could talk to his loyal fans who had made him a hero. He still wanted to perform, but his body was telling him no. He couldn't ignore the damage it had done, no matter how much he wanted to. He was so tired that he would sometimes stay in bed for days without being able to get up. After living for the show, the man was now struggling to keep up with what made him who he was. The world lost its king on August 16, 1977. Sonny remembers the chaos and pain of that day. Words could not fully describe the damage that happened afterward. Even though people tried to bring Elvis back to life, he was pronounced dead later that same day when he was found asleep in the bathroom at Graceland. The whole world was shocked, and there were a lot of questions. Even though a heart attack was officially given as the reason for Elvis's death, those closest to him, including Sonny, had doubts. There were clear signs that Elvis was addicted, and a lot of people thought that his sudden death was caused by years of drug use. His body had been hurt by years of taking prescription drugs, so even if the heart attack was the stated cause, it looked like other things worked together to bring about his sad death. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Hit the bell icon to stay updated, and click on the next video popping up on your screen. See you next time.